Greetings! Welcome to this, a companion video for the John Campea Show. This is, of course, a companion video, yet the fourth companion video I have done, answering your Endgame questions from our epic 5-hour Endgame review. I am not your host, John Campea. I am Robert Meyer Burnett, and it's a pleasure to be here to continue on with these epic companion video questions. Let's get right to it. This first one comes again from a fan of Peanuts. When Captain Marvel was fighting Thanos over the gauntlet, that moment when Thanos tries to headbutt her and nothing budged her, terror on his face. I love that scene. I thought it was great. If any moment defined Captain Marvel's appearance in Endgame for me, more than just the destruction of Thanos' ship, I loved that moment. I loved when she didn't even flinch. And so did my audience, by the way. They loved it. This next one, C. Rapier Copeland. Curious if time travel and the multiverse becomes a large part of the MCU. Does Cap staying back create alternate universes? Loki stealing the Tesseract? Well, it could be, but remember, we are talking about quantum travel. We're going through the quantum realm. I've always liked to think about time travel. There's different kinds of time travel, different flavors, as it were. And I think that quantum time travel, going in through quantum realities, is something that might be different. I hope they don't weigh into it too much, because I think that would be a little much. Ben Wilson says, would have liked a conversation between Hulk and General Ross. I couldn't help but think about John Schnepp during the Avengers Assemble scene. John Schnepp would have loved Avengers Endgame. He would have loved it. I miss him every day. But I agree. I would like to have seen Thunderbolt Ross talk a little bit more to the characters rather than just that quiet appearance, because with their tactics involved, I don't know if they really could, but I would like to have seen him assess the state of the world, as it were, after the snap. That could have been kind of cool. Alex Santiago says, John, now that the story arc is over, where do you think Marvel can go from here? I just find it almost impossible for them to top this. I think that they're not going to try. You can't top this. I don't think you can either. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think what they're going to have to do is try something new and try something different. That's why, I really look forward to seeing what's going to happen. I don't know, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. Senor Eric says, when Cap caught Mjolnir, the audience erupted. Mine too. It was amazing. Loved it. Dooley says, what's your dream villain in the next saga? I have to say, I've always liked Kang. I really do, but I would kind of like to see, I've heard that they're going to do something with the real Mandarin and the 10 rings, and I'd like to see that. But it's interesting. Once you've gone so cosmic, I think they need to kind of bring it back down to earth. So maybe the Mandarin could be that. Maybe the Mandarin, the real Mandarin. We'll see. Senor Eric also says, maybe I'm wrong, but I compare many of the time travel elements in this movie to Back to the Future 2. Overall, connecting the dots has been confusing. Senor Eric, I think it's a great analogy. I love Back to the Future 2. I think it's great, but time travel is very similar in this movie as it was in Back to the Future 2. So yes, I agree with you. El Zilko says, I'm really surprised there was no Adam Warlock Guardians 2 credit scene. Is he coming in Guardians 3? Thoughts? Well, El, I think so. I think James Gunn, I think Adam Warlock was the purview of James Gunn, and I think we're going to see him probably. Jason Espinosa says, Captain Marvel really seemed totally shoehorned in. Maybe, but I think she was always supposed to be there. I mean, remember, she is a cosmic character, and I really liked how they dealt with her, saying that there was a lot of other planets in the universe that were suffering from what Earth was suffering from, and she needed to help them. I liked her. I liked the way they used her. She wasn't used too much. I thought she was used just right. Tony C137 says, I like that T'Challa remembered Clint's name when he called him and told him to give him the gauntlet. I thought that was great. Great callback. It was really well done. Really enjoyed that. And it showed the camaraderie. I mean, all these characters were in it together. Thought that was great. Master Jiang says, do you think they will bring Iron Man from a different timeline if they want in future movies? I don't think so. I don't think they're going to mess with the timeline. I think they've found out that there was that old cartoon. There was that old commercial. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature, when it was butter or parquet. Probably, I'm so old that you guys don't remember that, but it's true. I think it's going to be kind of that kind of a situation. They just don't want to mess around with that too much. Anthony Cullen says, was I the only one excited to see Robert Redford? No, Anthony, I was too. What a cool callback as well to, of course, the Winter Soldier and Hydra. I love that. I thought it was great to see him come back. Awesome. Jacob Hirsch says, when Steve returns the Soul Stone, does this mean Nat's soul is returned? I also just want to see Cap interact with the Red Skull again. I don't know what happens with the Soul Stone. I think we've heard the Russo brothers chime in, but I don't know. I'd like to believe that what'd you say, that he doesn't know. No, they have said, the Russo brothers have said that no, Nat does not get returned. Once you've done it, it's done. There's no give backs unless you want to give back the Soul Stone. Nikki Andrews says, Snap people gone for 5 years gave weight to the Infinity War snap, so many things to deal with now that half the universe is back to be dealt with in other movies, i.e. non-destined people, remarried, or have died. Well, Nikki, I think it's absolutely astute of you to say that. Yeah, I mean, life's moved on. A lot happens in half a decade, so we'll see. Jacob Jansen says, did you like Captain Marvel's haircut in the movie? I thought she looked beautiful. I loved it too. And, it makes sense for doing what she's going to do. A shorter hairstyle makes sense when you're going into battle against people like Thanos, or who knows who she's been fighting. Michael B says, what was the Ancient One wrong about? I think she might have been wrong about Doctor Strange. They thought Doctor Strange was going to be the best of them, but then he gave away the Time Stone. Perhaps that wasn't the best thing to do, because she didn't know yet if it was the best thing to do. Rye Palacio says, Clint barehanded the Soul Stone. What the F? Well, remember, he was in sort of that nether world. Again, we don't know the actual the ins and outs of how these things work, but I would imagine that part of the process of getting the Soul Stone is that whoever sacrificed a life is somehow prepared to hold on to it. At least that's kind of what I thought. Robert Johnson says, Jarvis, the movies finally acknowledged the TV side. I love that. I mean, I thought it was great. Agent Carter, it was so great to see Jarvis. And yes, they finally did. I thought that was a great kind of how it was dipping their toes in the water of where the Disney Plus shows are going to go. Those new shows are going to be in continuity. I thought that was really great. I loved it. A fan of Peanut says, John, Iron Man has always been my favorite MCU character. I swear, man, they could not have done Tony's last moments more beautifully. So great. I agree. I think Tony Stark went out like a boss. He got to snap his fingers and say, I'm Iron Man. What a send-off. It couldn't have been better. Julianne S. says, which conclusion was more satisfying, Cap or Iron Man? I thought they were both equally satisfying in different ways. I love the idea that Cap got the life to lead that was stolen from him. That he got to find love and grow up and perhaps obviously have children. And Iron Man, I really liked what they did with him. I thought it was a course that he had charted for 10 years, and I thought he saved the world. It was great. Reese said, was Thanos killed too easily at the beginning? Well, remember, he was in bad shape after he not only did he use the stones, then he used the stones again to destroy the stones, which he said almost killed him. So he was in bad shape when we met him at the beginning of Endgame. Ren Davis says, I saw it as old Cap returning back to our timeline. It is old Cap returning back to our timeline, and I loved it. Nathan Freeman says, T'Challa taking the glove from Clint. They'd only met once before in Captain America Civil War. My name's Clint. I don't care. And T'Challa remembers his name. Well, he's a smart guy. He's the ruler of Wakanda, and it's not as if information about the Avengers wouldn't be available elsewhere. So I thought it was a great moment. Crazy Davey says, Wanda, wow, crushing Thanos. I was like, hell yeah, and she's so strong, he had to use a nuclear option to get away. I thought it was great. And, they've flirted with how powerful Wanda is, but if you've read the comics, Wanda Maximoff is one of the most powerful people in the MCU. Pardon me, the Marvel Universe, not the MCU. And to see it translated over the Marvel Universe is pretty great, because remember, House of M, if you haven't read that storyline, was all caused by her. So she's very, very powerful. Oscar Velos says, first time super chat. Well, thank you, Oscar. When Wanda finally gets her moment and fights Thanos, so much joy. So deserved. Whole movie was so great. Avengers assemble. Couldn't agree more, Oscar. I loved it. I've seen it 4 times now. Another semi-professional says, so when Cap kissed Peggy's granddaughter, was that his own granddaughter? Since old and young Steve coexisted, right? Could have been. I don't know. Or maybe he's just kissing his own granddaughter. I don't know. LSSJ Alpha. I think it probably might have been. There's some shenanigans. I call shenanigans. LSSJ Alpha says, Steve went back and stayed with Peggy. They both aged, and when Peggy died, he traveled back to the bench with the Pym particles and waited for the Avengers to show up on the day he got sent back. I agree with that. I think you're probably right about that. I think you're probably right. ASMR Junkie says, Old Cap came from a different timeline to the present. Yes, he did. Old Cap did come from a different timeline to the present, so I guess he didn't kiss his own granddaughter. At least that's kind of the way I would see it. Joe says, I like how we see powerful Thanos is without the stones to compare how easily he beat Hulk in Infinity War without using the Power Stone. I agree. I mean, Thanos is a formidable fighter. He conquers worlds. He takes half their populations out. He's a very, very strong character, and his origins make him one of the stronger people in the universe. Jeremanian says, theory, Cap lived and grew old in the alternate timeline. Who they bring back is the old Steve Rogers. It's just he doesn't appear next to them, but at the lake. You're correct, Jer. I think that's absolutely right. Alan Gonzalez says, Peggy knew in Winter Soldier. I think she probably did, but it might not be the same timeline. I think it might be a different Peggy, but you never know. But she could. Carlos Thompson, thanks for the super chat. I don't see that you had a question, but thank you for the super chat. Jared's reviews say, the theater I work at, some people had to take a breather during the last hour of the movie. They said it was too much for them. Crazy. It was. It was a lot to take in. Those wimps. Snake Jerusalem. Is that Spider Jerusalem and Snake Plissken? I like that. Old Cap probably traveled back to the main timeline. He did. That's what Old Cap did. Paul McElliott says, old Steve Rogers is from an alternate timeline and knows alternate Hank Pym. I agree. Think that's exactly right. Romance Nyogu says, Steve Rogers going back in time technically started the Marvel Universe because Steve creates a new timeline when he goes back, which is the actual timeline that the Marvel Universe follows. That's interesting, Romance Nyogu. I think that's... I like that theory. Midtown Mike says, I've never been so looking forward to a director's roundtable discussion for a movie Blu-ray digital download than for Endgame. Laugh out loud. And well, Midtown Mike, I think it's going to be very illuminating. Mike Lynch says, first act feels like something new from Marvel. Second act feels like an Ant-Man heist movie. And third act feels like the airport scene on steroids. Do you agree? Kind of, but putting all three of those things together gives us something we haven't had before. But I don't think you're off base with that. I think it was like getting three movies in one, and I thought that was cool. Melvin Romano says, how did Thanos get to their timeline without a Pym particle? Nebula used current nebulas to get back. Well, here's what I think. They're obviously very advanced. They've got super science, and if Hank Pym can make Pym particles on Earth, they could certainly analyze those Pym particles and make them where they were, probably with no problem at all. That's how I saw it. Laurie Scott says, Old Man Steve isn't an inconsistency because he used the quantum suit to come back to our reality after Peggy died in his splinter reality. I think that's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Sidra Games says, I assumed Cap traveled back. He had the suit. Pym and Pym particles were in the other timeline. Peggy dies. He travels back as an old man to give the shield and provide closure to his friends. I agree. I think that's exactly what happened. Deather said, the dusted characters appeared 5 years later. Therefore, the effects of the snap were not 100% undone. Nice to see that there are still repercussions. Absolutely. There are still repercussions. And I think that was important because if there weren't, you'd kind of be like, well, what was really lost? I mean, all those characters, and I think we're going to see it in Spider-Man Far From Home, are dealing with the fact that half of their friends and half of their family moved on. 5 years later, it's going to be weird. It's kind of like that show Manifest I love to hate watch. A plane went through a time warp and 5 years into the future and everyone's dealing with that. Imagine if a whole planet had to deal with that. I think that we're going to be dealing with that for a long time. They'll make mention of the 5-year gap probably for the next decade in the MCU. Casey Smith says, old Steve quantum leaped from his own timeline to give him closure before he died. He would know all of the people in the new timeline to do it. I agree, Casey, and many other people do as well. Nathan Freeman says, all 4 Russo movies are caper flicks. Captain America Winter Soldier is Cap's caper. Captain America Civil War is Zemo's caper. Avengers Infinity War is Thanos' caper, and Avengers Endgame is the Avengers caper. You know what, Nathan? I've never heard that before, but I love that. I really love that. Thanks for that. I think that's great. And I agree with you, by the way. Alan Gonzalez said they did a good job of making you forget the dusted were back. I agree. You don't remember. I mean, Hulk undusts them, and you're waiting, and then, oh, so great. On your left. So good. Casey Smith says, old Steve quantum leaped from his own timeline to give them closure before he died. He would know all of the people in his new timeline to do it. Yes, Casey Smith, I think you said that before, but I agree with you. Mo Reese says, regarding the old man Cap, Hulk said he blew right past his timestamp. Would that answer how Cap aged and not contradict Hulk's explanation of time travel? Not necessarily. I mean, I think we have to assume that he was on his way back and took a detour using his little time GPS. Matt Lant says, hi all. First time question from the UK. Love the show and Endgame. Natasha's sacrifice would have been a great segue for Professor Hulk to break his zen for a vintage Hulk smash rampage. It's true. It is true. But, again, I like the way they used Hulk in this movie. He did snap everybody back into existence. I mean, what's more heroic than that? It's just different. It just subverted our expectations. Robert Johnson said, did Cap steal the wife of Peggy's first husband? Well, not in our reality. He went back in time and became her husband in a different reality than came back to ours. Jaikon says, I love Joe Russo's cameo. I did too. I really liked that. It was interesting seeing him and talking about a same-sex relationship and Captain America being there to comfort him. I thought that was great. Also a veteran. His character was a veteran as well, and I really liked that scene a great deal. I thought it was great. Kyle Pager says, John in the minority here, but wasn't too impressed with Endgame. Captain Marvel randomly finding Stark drifting in space, a rat miraculously saving Ant-Man. It felt like Back to the Future with the Avengers. Thor was a joke. Poetic ending saved the film. Well, Kyle, I disagree with that. I don't think that Captain America... Look, they knew Captain America probably talked to the Avengers. Going to Titan or traveling to Titan was probably not a stretch, and they were on a course from Earth, and maybe Captain Marvel somehow heard their distress call, and when she was heading back to Titan to see if they could figure out what was going on, maybe she stumbled across the ship. I didn't buy that. I didn't bother that. That didn't bother me. And a rat miraculously saving Ant-Man, yeah, but it was 5 years later. It wasn't like it just happened, and that stuff was waiting around, and that's, see, I take that as the miraculous. There's always some crazy thing that happens in the universe, and that I believed it, and I like what they did with Thor. I really did, but I understand how you could feel that way. It's just I think the different things that were going on in Endgame, just like the different things that were going on in Infinity War, made the movie a bunch of great tastes that taste great together. Old Flicks Joe says, hey, John, which death was more emotional for you, Wolverine and Logan or Iron Man in Avengers Endgame? I picked Wolverine and Logan. Thoughts? Wolverine and Logan was different. I think Iron Man's was more emotional for me just because I'd seen, well, I can't say that because I've been watching the X-Men movies for a long time. It was just different. I think they were different, but I felt equally emotive about both. Deather says, I personally think the new Thor was hilarious. I did too. It was, again, like Professor Hulk, it was a new way to go. It was a different way to go. Unexpected for me. Bats220 says, Thanos headbutting Captain Marvel and her not giving a shit was such a great moment, though. Loved that moment. Thought it was great. I loved it. Mike Lynch says, I've now seen Endgame 3 times, and I still get chills when Falcon says, on your left. Do you think they will change D Plus show name or Disney Plus show name to Captain America and Winter Soldier? I don't think so. But that's just me. I think that he might have the shield, but I don't think he's necessarily Captain America. Third Man 3 says, overall, didn't love the score, didn't match the scenes. I was a big fan of the score. I'd have to go back and listen to it again, though. I want to get the CD. I haven't, or download the digital files. I'd like to hear it on its own. CJ Dunn says, I agree wholeheartedly with Rob about Old Man Cap. It's the only way it makes sense to me. Yeah, well, I'm glad you do. You should agree with me. Austin Hernandez says, I haven't seen the movie yet, and I just came here and real quick to tell you guys you're freaking awesome. Love the channel, been watching since Man of Steel. Well, Austin Hernandez, thank you for calling us freaking awesome. I think you, sir, you're freaking awesome too. 90 Daimu says Cap returned from the past but passed along them really tiny. Oh, to not scare them, and that Hulk wouldn't try and send him back when he sees him old. That's actually kind of funny. I never thought about that. Maybe you're right. Mike Lynch says on your left. Yeah, he came back. He didn't. I like that idea. I haven't read that one yet. I think that's good. Mike Lynch says on your left. So great. Jason Espinoza says, I don't know how you're going to get through all that, kid. I just punched through a starship. Were you not paying attention? Yeah, but remember, that's just mechanical. You know, Superman flies through buildings all the time. And no one was pushing back. River Elder says, the only way that Old Man Steve moment makes sense is if that particular moment takes place in a separate timeline for the rest of the film. Otherwise, it's a contradiction of Bruce's comments. No, I don't know. And I like the idea that he stayed small until he came out, and so no one saw him. No one saw him come back. And then he got bigger. I like that idea. Mala says, hey guys, love Endgame. What I will say is the A-Force moment in the final battle. It was cringeworthy and took me out of the moment. Yes, we do need diversity. Well, it was, to me, it was the same moment that we saw in the first Avengers when the camera swirls around the Avengers. It's just another group of Avengers showing them the female Avengers. I thought it was badass. They just happened to form that way on the battlefield. I thought it was cool. Oscar Villos says, Peter returns and the whole theater claps. So much joy. I agree. You know, everyone who I saw it with was clapping. It was great when he swung through from Titan. I thought it was awesome. Loved it. Aviator 986 says, can we just talk about the will, the endurance, the battle scenes, and the annoyance of Thanos? He just wouldn't go away. Well, Aviator 986, that's why he's a great villain. The man never gives up. Tristan Vargas says, someone thought to put a scene where Cap has his shield, catches Mjolnir in front of everyone, and finally says, Avengers assemble. Simply incredible. I love that it was in there. I mean, you know, the writers, Marcus and McFeely, were like, here's where we put him, say Avengers assemble, and getting Mjolnir. I mean, how cool would that have been? They must have been like giddy when they were writing that stuff, going like kids. I can only imagine that's how great it was. Roy L says, 1-on-1, no stones involved. Captain Marvel wins. Remember, he headbutted her and she didn't move. He took the power stone to knock her out. It was great, wasn't it? I mean, it shows both characters are very formidable, but even without the stones, Thanos is a boss. I loved it. Frankie Gouge says, Cap decided to go back in the present, not from the future, to change the past. Every decision made shapes the future of everyone. Well, I agree. Oh, that was good. TLH 6187, overrated. OP Scarlet Witch demolishing Thanos. Overpowered Scarlet Witch. I don't necessarily think that's underrated. You know what? Let me try this again. TLH 6187, underrated. Overpowered Scarlet Witch demolishing Thanos. I love that. I thought that was great. You're absolutely right, 87. Great moment. Third Man 3 says, John, you say it took Stark 10 years to make the sacrifice play, but he did sacrifice in Avengers 1, flew the nuke through the portal. It's true, but he came back. He was ready to make the sacrifice, but he did come back. But you're right. It was a sacrifice play. Carlos Thompson says, hello, guys. First time super chat. I think they're setting the kid in Iron Man 3, I guess setting up, to be the next Iron Man. Yes, in Iron Man 3, the kid has no interest in engineering, just like Tony. Oh, wait. Why can't I read these? Carlos, let me start this again. Carlos Thompson says, hello, guys. First time super chat. You deserve me to read this correctly if it's your first time. I think they're setting up the kid in Iron Man 3 to be the next Iron Man. In Iron Man 3, the kid has interest in engineering, just like Tony. Plus, he was at the funeral. I think they absolutely could be doing that, or at least to play some other part in the wider MCU. I think it's a great observation, Carlos, and thank you for your first super chat. Mike Lynch says, I also love Cap saying, Bucky is alive. I love that too. That was great. Hoser Mate says, oh my God, when Tony said shit, her daughter says it, I laughed. It was hilarious. I thought that girl, could they have got a cuter actress? I don't think so. Akushu Davala says, continuity error. Steve's head mask is supposed to be detached from the suit after the Battle of New York, before he meets 2203 Steve. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily continuity error. We just don't know what the suit does, but it could be. I didn't think of it as such. Zing D says, wish they'd reverse dusted by resetting time so all the collateral damage can be undone. Imagine if you were on a plane and the pilots got dusted. I never thought about that. Yeah, that would be a bummer. How many planes crashed? You know what? Now, see, I love this because you guys have put these new ideas in my head. Now I want to know how many things went kerflooey because. But I would hope that maybe only half the pilots went away. Maybe the co-pilots stuck around. Julian Joseph said, the Cap paradox needs explaining. Can you guys do it? This is a major argument between me and my friends. Well, I don't know. If Cap went back in time and lived his life in a alternate universe and then came back to the present which he left, and if he used the Pym particle and he was small, he did appear on the platform and then he just went away and grew himself back to normal size and was sitting on the park bench or something like that. I think Cap had to go into a different parallel existence. Malaw says, ballsy play by Marvel by ending 3 characters and leaving 3 huge holes. Not sure how I feel about it. Well, Malaw, we get 22 movies. I think that you're going to see new characters. I myself am really looking forward to Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, and to see whoever else. The Eternals, I think that's going to be really interesting as well. We shall see. Kyle Pager says, do you think Phase 4 will even build to an Avengers? My feeling right now is Marvel will just make standalone films for a while. Well, they will, maybe for 5 years until they get enough where they can make another Avengers or they have a story to tell. FutureDoc84 says, is Thor weaker in Endgame than Infinity War? Seems so to me. Well, remember, in Endgame, he's been drinking up a storm for 5 years. He's no longer the man he was. He's lost a step, kind of like Bond in Skyfall. So I think, yeah, he's not as strong. I mean, or he is as strong, he just doesn't know how to summon that inner strength, which is kind of what the movie's about. Rodney Jackson says, so everyone talks about Cap going back in time to live, but what about young Thanos leaving the past with Nebula and Gamora and killed in the future before the events of Guardians and Infinity War? Well, remember, that Thanos is from a different timeline. So our Thanos still existed. Moose Kingdom says, not our Cap, different Cap from identical timeline. I don't think so. I think it's our Cap went into an different timeline and came back. ASMR Junkie is back. Loki is dead in the main timeline. He is dead in the main timeline, but we're dealing with quantum physics now, so we've got multiple timelines. So who knows? Fuzzy FJ says, yeah, that's America's ass. Totally hilarious. I don't get out of the shower in the morning without looking at my own ass saying, that's really not America's ass. It's really too bad. But I think about how I could have been a younger man and said that. Too bad I'm old now. Callum Foster says, when Cap goes back in time, he makes a new reality, but who's to say the Cap on the bench didn't do the same thing when he traveled back? Not the same Cap. I don't think so. I think it is our Cap. Old Flicks Joe, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Search for Gamora. I nod to Star Trek 3. Well, thanks, Old Flicks Joe. That could be. One never knows. You never do know. Well, you never know. Logan Astrup says, Rocket seeing a raccoon would have been funny. You know, I thought they were going to play that out too. And around Avengers headquarters, there had to be some raccoons. But yeah, I was surprised they didn't do that. But maybe that would have been too much, too fourth wall breaking. I don't know. Joe Leon says, with Infinity Stones destroyed by Thanos in the MCU present, how do you guys speculate will the Ancient One's fears come true? Well, I don't know if they will. That's a very good question. But yeah, there is no time stone now, so I don't know how they're going to deal with that. It's really interesting. I mean, what is the Sorcerer Supreme going to do? We shall see. Fuzzy FJ says, for a moment I thought you were Build-A-Bear, which I thought that was very funny. That was a very funny line. Scuba Steve says, awkward moment, Cap dropping off the Soul Stone. Yep, that's going to be awkward. But then again, you know, you just have to get it. Why would you have to take the Soul Stone back to Vormir anyway? Couldn't you just have it in the universe somewhere? I mean, it could be wherever you want it to be, couldn't it? Maybe. I don't know. Baclody says, oh my gosh, someone has to guard the Soul Stone, right? So if Red Skull was gone, then Cap had to stay and guard the stone? I don't know. We don't know. I think Red Skull, because he was messing with the universe with other Infinity Stones, that was his punishment, but who knows? Eric Lee says, Captain America could have went back after Cap got frozen. Remember, he still had the Pym suit and particles. Could have waited until Cap was unfrozen to go back to the future, says he knew what would happen. Could be. Could be. Deadpool Chinese says, it's not actually time travel, it's reality travel. There's something to be said for that, Deadpool Chinese. I think you're right. It's quantum physics. It's not necessarily time travel per se, even though they are traveling through time. They're really traveling through realities in the quantum realm. Bernard Gaitan says, you can't change the past. You create new realities. Taking Nat from past creates a new reality without Nat. Our timeline is actually new where Cap exists in the past. I don't think they're creating new realities. They're going into different quantum realms of reality. There's many, many different realities. They're going into different quantum realms. At least that's the way I saw it. Dynamite V1 says, so Cap took Mjolnir with him when he went back to return the stones. Did he have it with him all that time, and do you think we'll see it again? No, I think he returned it to Asgard when he was supposed to. I think he went to Asgard and gave the Thor's hammer back the moment that Thor left, just like the stones. Daniel Weiss says, oh no, I've gone cross-eyed. I suggest you don't worry about those things and just to enjoy yourself. That goes for you too. Yes. I don't exactly remember what that is right now, but it's a good line. ASMR Junkies here. 2014, Gamora and Nebula were on the ship when it traveled. Yes, they were. They absolutely were. Senor Eric says, remember when we thought The Force Awakens record was going to take a long time to be beaten? Feels like years ago. We'll see. We'll see if it gets beaten totally. It's not going to get... We know now that it's not going to get beaten domestically, but it will, I think, worldwide. We'll see. Oh, wait, we're talking... Yes, domestically. It is getting beat, but it did get beat worldwide. Twig Griff says, I don't want janky old 2012 Loki. I want 28 character developed Loki. Feels like losing a game save. Our Loki is still very dead. Same with Gamora. That's true, but it's still Loki, and we're going to see, I think, having time, we're going to see, 8 hours with Loki, and we'll see how that develops. I think it could be kind of cool. Frankie Gouge send a super chat. Thank you, Frankie. John Walkton says, so wait, the only fatality in Infinity War was Heimdall? No. I think Gamora actually really did die. And other people did too. Bernard Gaitan says, we viewers were never watching the original reality. Oh, yeah, I think we were. Thor is a Hall of Fame plate cleaner. Big belly, says Luis Blanco. Well, Luis, thank you for that. You're right. Lori Scott says, you can't bring Nat back from the past because that would create a splinter reality and ruin that reality. It would be morally wrong. Lori, totally agree with you. 100%. Absolutely true. Alexander Kent says, loudest cheer for a movie. Calling it The Lion King will be the box office movie of all time. $3 billion. P.S. Thanos headshot. Wow, what an opening. So good. I don't think Lion King is going to beat Endgame, but you never know. Mike Rodriguez says, power levels of all the characters change each movie. Well, they're not really defined. I think it depends what kind of inner strength they're called upon to bring forth to do whatever it is they're supposed to do. Remember, Thanos was damaged goods when Thor chopped his head off. He had snapped his finger twice, once to rid everybody in the second to destroy the stones. He was barely alive. Well, Roy L., you are correct, sir. Totally agree with you. Ruski9110 says, the entire MCU takes place in a branch timeline created by Cap staying in the past. It's just he didn't change anything, so it's identical to the main timeline. So if Cap didn't go back, old Cap would still exist. I disagree with that. Remember, you cannot change your past. When you're going through the quantum realm, you're changing realities, not timelines. I think that's different. I think that's what people get hung up on. CJ Adams says, bad weekend to be a Stark. It's true. Noel Wen says, I love the literal and figurative passing of the gauntlet from the original Avengers to Black Panther, Spider-Man, and Captain Marvel. Absolutely. I thought that was great. Great symbolism there, and obviously clearly intentional. Really, really liked it. Old Flicks Joe says, I thought Clint Eastwood was old man Steve Rogers. That would have been funny if they actually had done that, but they could never have got the voice right. Paul Sanchez says, Thanos is only able to lock out Captain Marvel because he used the Power Stone in his fist. Yeah, It's true. Marie Seifring says, not up on these comics, but other commentators mentioned A-Force as a group of female superheroes from a comic run. Scene where the female heroes help Captain Marvel carry the gauntlet is a reference to it. That's true. There is an A-Force comic. You should check out. Some of them are good. Sam Bierman says they aren't going into the past. The past is coming into their future. That's how the past isn't affected and the stones can be pulled. Well, they're going into a different reality. Sean Gilligan says, setting up for Young Avengers, maybe. I wouldn't. That makes sense. Young Avengers could be cool. Al Zola says, isn't the timeline forever altered by Thanos of the past dying in the future? He is no longer in existence, so Infinity War can't happen. Remember, you can't change your own past. You're going through the quantum realm to a different reality. So, yeah, it's different. So thanks for that, Al. Reese says, you called it. Movie opens with Clint's family. John did call it. He was correct. Miss Cody says, thoughts on what Schnepp would have thought of Endgame. Miss all three of you reviewing together. I do too. Miss that Schnepp. Wanda Clint discussion at the end reminded me of fans over the years who didn't live to see the Endgame. Yeah. D's Nuts says, Betty should have been the reason Hulk hulks out in Endgame. Maybe they reunite after the dusting and was killed when Thanos bombed Avengers headquarters. Could be. But if she was killed during a bombing, she would be dead. She would be gone. I don't think you can't get brought back if you're already dead. Schwafwan Khan says, your thoughts on the chances of Captain Marvel or Cap or Iron Man ever returning? I understand you've had a pretty firm stance on Marvel's habit of fake deaths. Well, John thinks they're coming back. I do not. I really don't. Maybe we'll have old Cap around. He's around. But, and they do have the quantum technology to make him younger. If they force time through Cap rather than sending Cap through time. We've already seen that. Shadow113 said in a super chat, thank you for that. Dylan Shrike said, you can't kidnap a past widow because it's unethical. They'd have to get past the dead bodies of the Avengers from her timeline, including her, to do it. I agree. I absolutely agree. You can't do that. That is unethical. Just Plain Steve says, next Cap movie, Captain America Infinity Watch. Him returning the stones, encountering Red Skull, and ultimately choosing to stay back with Peggy. That'd be interesting. I mean, you could do an old Cap movie. People would totally watch that. Make it a total romance in the MCU. The new Ulysses Smith III says, is there any way possible at all somehow that they can release the movie to buy on digital or Blu-ray, even if they sell it at a crazy price? I'll buy. I know they won't, but I'm just saying. Well, they're going to release. I've already pre-ordered Endgame on Blu-ray. I have the Steelbook coming. So they are releasing it. Oskabat says, hope this is the last Avengers movie. Great ending to the franchise, and I hope Thor stays large, makes him seem more like a god than a typical superhero. Interesting. I think they're going to make another Thor movie, though. And maybe even as Guardians of the Galaxy, he'll lose his weight. Who knows? ASJ82 says, Paul Rudd didn't miss a beat. Flawless in portraying panic, confusion, comedy, anger, science, nerdiness, drama in general, etc. I loved it. Paul Rudd was one of the MVPs of the movie. He was so good. So very good. Really enjoyed him. Isaac Meckler says, Young Avengers movie maybe? Hawkeye's daughter, kid from Iron Man 3, Iron Lad, Spider-Man and Cassie Lang as Stature. Could be interesting. I agree. I mean, they can do anything. A Young Avengers movie I think would be great. Who wouldn't watch that? I'd watch that. Eric Becker says, how about the shot when the Avengers Assemble army is running towards Thanos' army before they clash with them? Thor doing his battle shout with Iron Man and Captain and CO overhead? Wow, ingrained in my brain. Oh, yeah. I thought it was great. It was great. Loved it. It's great. Lord of Thunder, Prince of Stars says, R.E. Thanos not losing to Thor. Thor caught him off guard in Infinity War. That is true. That is true. That is true. Also, stuff's been going on. It's been a while. Otaku Senpai says, I feel Thanos won. He just sat when he realized he lost, all chill and dusted. Damn it. For me, in MCU number 5 overall, because DT and... Wait. Oh, so, okay. I get it. Otaku Senpai. You're saying that overall, between DC and MCU, Avengers 1, Man of Steel, Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier, Avengers 3, and Avengers 4. I agree. That's a good list. I like that you included Man of Steel on there. Good for you, Otaku Senpai. D's Nuts says Betty should have been the reason Hulk hulks out in Endgame. We already had that. Maybe they reunite after the dusting and was killed when Thanos bombed A headquarters. Yes. Alan Gonzalez says, was it Space Asgard or Earth Asgard? In the movie, I mean, they're building new Earth Asgard. I don't think it was Space Asgard. I think they're building Asgard in Norway somewhere. Gagan Palia says, they should have named this movie Avengers Payoff. I like that. They could have. Francesca De Pisa says, Cap and Peggy finally got their dance. I bawled my eyes out. I honestly can't believe people are upset with this character arc and development because of that. I wasn't. I thought it was wonderful. It was sweet and nice and very much earned by our man Cap. He deserved it. Alan Hall says, the moment when Tony sees his father, man tears. Total man tears. I loved it. And that whole exchange they had, especially at the end. Thank you for your service. I love that. I thought it was great. Calvin Fisher says they wouldn't steal Nat and Tony from the other timeline. No, they wouldn't, because that's another reality. They wouldn't do that to that reality. That would be like the ultimate crime. Burt Macklin says, am I the only person who was rooting for Thanos? No. You look, but he won in Infinity War. They needed to get those people back. But I could see why you might. He's awesome. I love Thanos. Harry Pickering says, thought Paul Rudd was so good in this movie. He was, as we said earlier, he was an MVP. I loved Paul Rudd. I thought Paul Rudd was, just incredible. Mike Thompson says, never forget that Thanos was just making himself dinner, crippled and defenseless when the Avengers show up and murder him in cold blood. That is true, but you know what? He already killed half the universe, so do I have sympathy for him? I don't know. Mike Thompson... it was Mike Thompson who said, never forget that Thanos was just making himself dinner. Well, thanks for that, Mike. You're right. They took him out, man. How cool is that? Was not cool. Gabrielle Mengisha says, Cap kind of messed up. Peggy said she enjoyed a happy life with kids and the Winter Soldier. He basically erased that whole bloodline. LOL. Remember, it's not the same universe. Robert Johnson says, to me, all talk of time travel is just theory. Yes, it was. They didn't know exactly what was going on yet. Lady Jedi Marvel 18 says, I can't wait to get my hands on the DVD so I can watch it with the director's commentary. So many answers get answered when I watch it through a director's perspective. I feel you. As you know, I love my physical media. I think it'll be great. Let's get that disc. I have pre-ordered my 4K disc, which comes with the Blu-rays with all the goodies. From Best Buy to go along with my Infinity War Steelbook, so I'm very excited. Rusty9110 says, anytime you change the past, it creates an alternate universe from that point going forward. So if you took Black Widow out of the past, she wouldn't exist in that universe anymore. Could be, but remember, it's not so much time, it is the reality. And you don't want to mess with the realities, especially when quantum mechanics are involved. Burt Macklin says, how does Cap return the Soul Stone? My answer to that is very carefully, Burt. I don't know, but it would have been interesting to see. El Khalil says, Scarlet Witch in Endgame is how I imagine a Dark Phoenix should be in an X-Men movie portrayal. Let's hope that movie does better. Emma versus Jean 2024. I'd love to see that. I'd love them to do House of M. How cool would that be? Ben Rayner says, Scott and Cassie reunion gets me. Yep. That was great when they went to the door. I loved it. Wesley Cunningham says, Pepper sitting with Tony at his end, telling him to look at her so she could reassure him finally, you did it, we'll be okay, you can rest. It messed me up. What a great ending. Loved it so much. It was really, really good, wasn't it? James Christie says, took 3 attempts for me to not feel disappointed, even canceling a showing. Thor is a moron. Just get Alex Winter to play him next time. Just lacking, not awful, but painfully disappointing. 4th fave. I don't know, James. I disagree with you. I really liked it. But, if that's your opinion, you're entitled to it. Nothing wrong with that. Shannon Davis says, Cap going back created new timeline after Peggy's death. He uses the bracelet to return Rob's theory doesn't work because Loki left, which changes Avengers End. Well, Shannon, I don't know about that because everything is different. The realities are different. They didn't just go back to one different reality. Every time they went back in time, that was a different reality at that point in time. Burt Macklin says, solving time travel with the Mobius strip was dumb. Well, I think it just looked like a Mobius strip. It was, remember, he said that's a shape. he inverted it, but you might be right. But remember, there's a lot of other things going on. That was just one of many calculations. Daniel Wokey says, first Marvel TV reference with Jarvis in the 1970s. I agree. I loved seeing that. I love that they finally acknowledged the MCU. Disney Aviation Roller Coaster Enthusiast 2019 says that look on Thanos' face when Captain Marvel shows up and tries to get the gauntlet was priceless. Also like Tony's I Am Iron Man. Yes, because they were awesome, both moments. James Christie said, undecided on New Hulk. No action scenes for him. Odd. Well, maybe, but I think they were building up to that over 3 movies. I thought it was great. Professor Hulk was great, and he saved all of the dusted. I thought that was good. Aiden Cossack says, longtime fan, been watching since I was 14, now I'm 19. Crazy. John would tell you, amazing, thanks for watching. I just pre-ordered every Endgame hot toy. Did you have to even pre-orders on that is expensive. Pray for my wallet. Also, Schnepp was with us all. Love. He was. He absolutely was. I'm firmly convinced he was. Burt Macklin says, what happens when Cap meets the Red Skull? I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be interesting. Hans says, hey guys, they did give themselves a way to bring Cap back, a spin through the Dr. Hulk prototype time machine. That is true. That is true. They can push time through. I don't know if they're going to do that, but they could. Seems like that would be odd. But, I mean, even though they're pushing time through his body, I don't know if his cells would work. Would they all collapse on themselves? Because we do age. But you never know. How does that work? I don't know. Mr. Phenom 444 says, I love the moment between Scott Lang and Teenage Cassie. Paul Rudd acted that beautifully. I agree. I thought Paul Rudd, again, MVP of the movie. Really, really good. George Balaga says, I avoided spoilers until watching Endgame with a group of friends last night, but when we barely started watching, the movie some a-hole yelled, Iron Man dies. He is an a-hole. Destroyer of joy, as I like to say. Screw that guy. Kamchia430 says, oh, he doesn't say anything, but sent us a super chat in. Thank you. Illy Chen says, with Shuri being unsnapped, she can finish fixing Vision without the Mind Stone like she was in Infinity War. Listen to RMB. This was always Cap's path. I agree. She will fix the Vision. She absolutely will. Henry Pickering says, love your show in here in the UK. Loved Endgame, although finding out after the movie that the cinema toilets were out of order wasn't much fun. Oh, man. That would have been brutal. Run to the nearest pub. Colin Jang says, before Tony died, I think Pepper said Friday. What do you think is the possibility that Tony becomes the new Jarvis and helps Spider-Man? I love that idea. We've talked about that before. I think Tony being the new Jarvis would be wonderful, and it would add a lot, I think, to the MCU going forward. Burt Macklin says, Captain Marvel covers 1,000 light years in a few hours or days. That's what jump gates are for, man. Jump gates. Glad I hate her. Glad I hate her says, what way could they have won without time travel? I don't know if they could. Could they? I don't know. They certainly couldn't have gotten the stones. I think if they killed Thanos, they were out. I mean, remember they killed Thanos and 5 years go by, so it wasn't until time travel was a possibility there's anything they could have done. Rock Lobster number 9 says, do you think Professor Hulk is worthy of Mjolnir? Probably. I'd like to see that. Shadow113 says, love your show, love Endgame, hope your voice makes it. Well, let's see if my voice makes it to the end of this. Z-Fix says, I'd like to believe that the answer to Captain America time travel conundrum is quite simple. Cap goes to the time they took the Tesseract, Peggy dies in Civil War in CW. That's not Civil War. Oh, Peggy dies in CW, and he returns with time gaps in Civil War. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. That's interesting. Mark Blaza says Pepper Potts silently crying when she sees Tony passed away was really powerful, and it was my most emotional part of the film. Well, Mark, you aren't wrong. I thought that was amazing, and it was great because it was foreshadowed earlier in the film. The whole thing about how it was compost or whatever. I did like that. Anthony Carter says, the scene with Clint and Nat hanging over the cliff right before she died made me tear up. Awesome work by Jeremy and Scarlett. Anthony, I agree. That was some great, great, great work. I really, really, really like that. Reese's, the whole notion of Thor being rusty for 5 years doesn't make sense. He's a literal god. He's thousands of years old. 5 years is like a week for him. Still, 5 years is 5 years. It's 5 years. And plus, he was drinking himself to death. And that takes a toll. Burt Macklin says, is the rat the most important character in the MCU? Perhaps the rat is. Jorge Sosa says, wife told me to pre-order that new Thanos hot toy. Kind of want a Fat Thor one if they make one. Laugh out loud. Also have Ant-Man on pre-order. Good for you, man. I just got my Infinity War Thanos and my Infinity War Iron Man. So finally, they came. So random. Push time through old Cap. Boom, as good as new. Yeah, but is his body as good as new? I don't know. Serbian Andraka says, Nat falls on your left. Avengers assemble. I am Iron Man. You can rest now. I held it together through it all. Steve and Peggy dancing. Me sobbing. Serban, is it Serban? Serban? I did too, man. I lost it then. I thought it was great. Chad Carey says, love the show. Did Thanos catch Stormbreaker? I don't know. Did he? I think he probably could. Because I don't necessarily, it's not like Mjolnir. Do you have to be worthy of wielding Stormbreaker? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Robert Johnson says, Gamora came with Thanos. Did Tony snap her way? He could have. He could have. Gagan Palia says, felt chills when Tony removes the IV and the nano reactor. Yes, I agree too. I thought that was great. But I don't think there was a nano reactor. Well, yeah, it was in nanoparticles, but I don't think his chest is okay, so he doesn't need it for his heart. Ozzy Ensit says, how did Captain America return the Soul Stone? Again, it's a mystery. Maybe we'll hear on the director's commentary. Reese says, so going forward, the whole world knows and remembers the dusting. Therapists will be making bank. Yeah, the whole world remembers. People were gone for 5 years. I mean, the world's still gonna be a mess. You got to reincorporate all those people. Robert Johnson says, I wonder how many people have new spouses. Awkward. I agree. It's going to be crazy. Crazy. But as I said, if you're hate watching Manifest like I am, Manifest deals with that very subject, and it's even 5 years. Roberto Perez says, Cap's dance at the end was a sad, happy moment. It certainly was a sad, happy moment. Frostbite says, your dad liked cheeseburgers. I loved that line. I agree. It was great. It was great. Gabrielle Mangacia says, Black Widow deserved a better send-off. She had one of the better character developments in the whole MCU, from a ruthless assassin to a motherly figure. I agree, but I thought it was great that the way I really liked the way they did it. And we're going to get another Black Widow movie, so we'll see how it deals with the character. Eddie Chelsea says, I love that Black Panther was the first hero we saw come back via the portal. It gave that moment a heightened sense of coolness. Also great that Wasp made it to her first team-up movie. I thought that was great too. It was really good. Alkai 404 says, was Asgard restored? When Doctor Strange's portal opened for Asgardian guards to come in, you could see the Golden Palace in the background. Also, hadn't Hela killed them all? Could she be back? Plot hole. Was it a plot hole? I don't know. That's interesting. Or maybe they've just rebuilt it on Earth. I don't know. Burt Macklin says, what metal is Thanos' sword made of? I don't know. Probably some outer space metal that we don't know anything about. Matthew Bravo says, well, he sends in a super chat. Thank you, Matthew. Burt Macklin says, how did Doctor Strange assemble everyone in 30 minutes? Well, I'm sure he had time to do it. He probably contacted them. Who knows? A YouTuber, Iron Man done goofed. Well, I don't know about that. Robert Johnson says, why would anyone believe a word from the Red Skull? Well, I think now that he's working for the Soul Stone, he might be compelled to tell the truth. You never know. Kamchia 430 says, the signing from the end during the end credits reminded me of Star Trek 6, a grand finale movie where they also did the same. A great film. I agree. I really adored that when they did it for Star Trek 6. I thought it was great. Burt Macklin says, hope they don't revisit the time travel plot device in future MCU movies. It'll just turn into the X-Men continuity, schmontinuity. Probably so. I hope they don't use time travel. They use it well in this movie, I thought. They don't need to do it again. Serban Andrika says, so shouldn't Old Cap be in a different reality? I think Old Cap was in a different reality, but because he was from our reality, he was able to return. Kevin Bennett says, how did Cap return the Soul Stone to Vormir? Would Red Skull still be there? Exchange the Soul Stone for Soul. I don't think you can't put the soul back and get the soul that was left there. It doesn't work that way. That's what I've heard. I think that's what the Russo brothers said. So you can't, once someone's dead, their soul, it's gone. So Kevin Bennett sent a super chat, but then he missed out. And he comes back and he says, how did How did Cap Stone's Tesseract Cube, Orb, and Scepter containers when he returned? That is a good question. I don't know. I don't know if they need to even go to the same place. Maybe they do. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I don't know. Gerardo Reyes says, I have to say I love this movie so much. The last battle was amazing, but Cap getting the hammer was so freaking awesome. That did it for me, and please stop the time travel theories. It's giving me a headache, laugh out loud. Well, to be honest, Gerardo, it's giving me a headache too. But it was freaking awesome, wasn't it? LeBron007 says, did anyone catch that Namor reference? If you're talking about what Okoye was saying about underneath the water, earthquake underneath the water, I did. I thought that was a Namor reference. I thought it was sly and cool, but maybe it's not. Vegas XD sent a super chat. Thank you, Vegas. Ozzy says, they talked about how there was once 3 stones in the same place at once. They could have traveled back to Wakanda, kill Thanos, and let the gauntlet from that timeline to the present. Boom. Laugh out loud. I don't know if they could. Koba asks, where was Goose? I don't know. Where was Goose the Flurkin? I miss Goose. Maybe he was dusted. Can you imagine? Maybe wakes up, wait, where am I? Some random guy says, Cap returning stones means he sees Red Skull again. It is true. I don't know what happens there. I'm sure it was an interesting conversation, though. Reese says, did Nebula mourn Thanos' death, even though he treated them harshly on some level? Didn't Gamora and Nebula love him? Even Gamora cried for him in Infinity War. They probably did. I'm sure she did in her own way. Jacob Hirsch says, I cried when Cap finally got his dance. It was great. And because it was set up, it was so good. Loved it so much. A fan of Peanuts says, Robert and John, how was Hawkeye being a non-celestial? How was Clint able to hold the damn Soul Stone and not crumble or melt? Love this film, by the way. Well, again, I think it's because the Soul Stone allows one to do that. You don't necessarily need the gauntlet. It probably prepares you. Once you've sacrificed a soul, something's happened inside you to prepare you for wielding the Soul Stone. At least that's kind of what I would think, maybe, sort of. Robert Mickle says, do you think there's a great Marvel one-shot following Cap going back to the time? I'd love to see him interact with the Red Skull. Robert, I would love to see that. They should put that on the disc. If they haven't filmed it, they should, because I'd love to see it. Al Zolat says, a rat? Lame as F. Should have been Scott's daughter. Maybe, but I like the fact that the universe, sometimes this kind of stuff happens. Random stuff happens. Tornadoes set down and just destroy houses for no reason. So I bought that. Shane Bennett says, funny how Ant-Man's first thought when he learns of everything that happened is basically, let's break into the past and steal some shit. Well, because he came out of the past. He was trapped in time, trapped in the quantum realm. I thought it was good that was what he was thinking about. Caleb Kaiser says, say the end credits was Carl Mordo giving a speech. You don't think there will be any consequences. You broke the rules of time travel. The bill comes due always. I like that. Yes, it does. Maybe they are going to pay the piper. Maybe fate, like in the Final Destination movies, is going to catch up with them. I don't know. Caleb Kaiser says nothing. He just sends in a super chat. Oh no, that's what Caleb said. Thank you, Caleb. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. You're right. I think that was interesting. The bill always comes due. Stephen Roth says, Endgame needs only 1.81 times global opening weekend multiplier to beat Avatar. Well, Stephen, since the time you sent the super chat in and the present day, we're getting there. We are getting there. Burt Macklin says, Thor has been cut up mentally 6 different ways since Ragnarok. By far the most interesting character going into Phase 4. Excited for Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or Thor 4. Burt, I agree with you. I totally agree with that. I think that Thor was really interesting. I liked how he was psychologically damaged because he's not used to that. I thought that was great stuff, and I agree with you. Zombotron 5678 says, so Hulk re-snaps trillions of people alive and loses an arm. Tony snapped a few hundred enemies away and died. Who had it easier? I don't know. Hard to say. I mean, remember, Thor was bringing back the entire universe. So a lot more power, I would imagine, was expended. Robbie DeMexican says, I work at a pizza place next to the movie theater. Avengers fans are swarming us. And on top of that, there's a dance competition across the street. So dance moms and the Avengers might kill me. Well, Robbie, please send in another super chat and tell us you're still alive. Because if you're not DeMexican anymore and you've been killed, that would be sad. Anthony Gonzalez says, saw your spoiler warning tweet and muted you. Laugh out loud. Unmuted to find out when spoiler YouTube would go live. Huge props to owning the boo-boo and fixing your TL. You'd make a great dad. Wink, wink. Anthony Gonzalez, are you saying that you want John Campea to adopt you? Actor Friend 90 sent a super chat. Thank you, Actor Friend 90. John Peterson says, the assembling of the female Avengers was so great. I agree. I thought seeing A-Force was rad. What's not to love? Jason Espinoza says, you guys will not get me into a discussion of time travel logic. I'd rather chew broken glass. Loved it. Ian McWayne says, don't say that name. Although the let him go shtick went on a little long, you really feel Thor's shame because of lines like this. I agree. Look, I thought what they did with Thor was great. I understand why people didn't like it. I thought it was great. Actor Friend 90 says, I guess Redford's last movie wasn't The Old Man and the Gun after all. You are right. And how cool is that? I mean, if Robert Redford, legend, goes out with Endgame, good on him. Agent Awesome says, hey, John, I'm seeing people saying that Thor is more OP than Captain Marvel, overpowered than Captain Marvel, because of what he did to Thanos, but would he have been able to do that without Stormbreaker? Good question. I don't know. That's a good question. I think they've always played Thor as not being too overpowered. I thought they played... Look, I mean, it wasn't exactly Thanos was at his best when Thor beheaded him. Vince Carter of Mars says, my cousin said his favorite part was when Black Panther was playing running back. Laugh out loud. Mine was Avengers Assemble and Spidey getting to use Insta-Kill. That was all. I love seeing Insta-Kill. I love Iron Spider. Unlike John, who doesn't like Iron Spider as much, I liked Iron Spider in the Civil War comic. I love the design of Iron Spider. And boy, what a hell of a hot toy. Love the hot toy for Iron Spider. It's dope. Troika S says, Marvel and Witch easily embody the power of a single Infinity Stone. Thanos has no active stones in both fights and had to palm the Power Stone to KO Marvel. I agree. I mean, I think that Scarlet Witch and Captain Marvel were pretty awesome, and I agree with you. Chief Dog 1100 says, I love the Hulk, and I'm glad they didn't have him fight the way everyone changed. Why can't... Oh. I love the Hulk. I'm glad they didn't have him fight. He changed. Everyone changed. Why can't he... We've seen him rage before. Oh, I see what you're saying, Chief Dog. It was touching to see his growth. I am with you. We've seen Hulk out. I really liked him. As he said, he sort of solved the problem of the Hulk for himself and brought everybody back. I like the fact that we're seeing something different. You know, seeing something different is not a bad thing. Ben Rayner says, Cap versus Thanos army reminded me of John versus Ramsey army in the Battle of the Bastards. I agree with you. I love that. You're not wrong. Some random guy says, Captain Marvel got knocked out by Thanos using the Power Stone. Yes, he did, or she did. Jason Espinoza said, do we get Shazam beer scene in Spider-Man Far From Home now he's 21? He might. I think he might be drinking. I mean, that's the funny thing. Peter Parker would be 21 years old chronologically, but not really. His age is not, his biological age is not 21. But yes, I honestly think that should be a joke in Far From Home if they don't play it, because his ID would be properly, I'm that much older. I'm now 21. I think they should make that. You know what? I would imagine we might see that joke. Like they all realize that Ned and him, they all realize that they're 21 years old and they all go buy booze. That'd be a great scene. I could see the movie opening that way. Like, because it's high school graduation or whatever. Jason Espinoza says, oh, I already read that. Trent Morrison, thanks for the super chat, Trent. ASMR Junkie. ASMR Junkie says, Loki isn't back. Main timeline, Loki is still dead. That is true. Loki is dead. Anthony T says, how come no one is talking about the elephant in the room, Captain Marvel's new short haircut? It took me out of the movie, laugh out loud. Well, you know, it didn't take me out of the movie because I've read the comics where she has that haircut. So I liked it. I mean, it doesn't make sense for a soldier to have long hair that people can pull in battle or whatever. Daryl Hodges says, Endgame time travel rules equal Infinity Stones destroyed. I think so. I think our universe doesn't have Infinity Stones, and maybe that feeds into the Eternals movie. I don't know. Could be. Patrick Conway says, what the fuck was Thunderbolt Ross doing at Tony's funeral? Look, he knew the Avengers. Thunderbolt Ross, they did bring the Earth back. They did save the Earth, and they brought everybody back. Why wouldn't Thunderbolt Ross honor Tony Stark? Trent Morrison says, day in Iowa and daytime in Africa during Snap. Well, that's interesting. I can't fault you there. Trent Morrison, thanks for the super chat. I really appreciate it. That, because you never know. It's a good point. Gara Khan says, over under 30%, we get AI Tony Stark like in the comics. Keep up the great works. I think, you know what, Gara Khan, I think over 30% we're going to get Tony Stark's voice in the MCU. Anthony T says, I'm a bit confused about the MCU. How come they disregard Spider-Man 1 and 2, but Homecoming is included in the 22 movies? Well, because Spider-Man 1 and 2 are not part of the MCU. They've rebooted the new Spider-Man is a complete reboot. Truth is, says Black Widow won't stay dead, but I think it's very likely that her movie is a prequel with how she became a spy, and we'll definitely see Winter Soldier and Hawkeye. I agree with that. I think you're right. I think it's being reported too now. Kevin Bennett says, thoughts on the possibility of Robert Downey Jr. returning as an AI hologram Tony Stark? I think it's there. I think we're going to see that. I think you're right, or at least a voice. ASMR Junkie says, Stark did not have the. I think what you're saying is Thanos had the original gauntlet, but Stark did not. I don't know what that's referring to or what that means, but I think you are right about that. Jorge Sosa says, I don't think, or it's George, but I think it's Jorge. I don't think the Iron Man gauntlet is as powerful as the Etri gauntlet. Thanos had to rip off the Power Stone to knock out Captain Marvel. In my opinion, it was barely enough to do the job. I agree. The Etri gauntlet, the gauntlet that Peter Dinklage forged, is way more powerful and can probably focus the energies more. Andrew Jones says the MCU is going woke. I don't know about that. I think the MCU is still classical storytelling. Emerson Ribeiro says, after staying incognito with Peggy till the day she dies, old Cap then reactivates the time GPS device and returns to his timeline and waits for the day he met Falcon to give him the shield. I agree, man. I think it's exactly what happened. And he could have shown up on that platform using pin particles, and he didn't make himself big until later. Gara Khan says Hulk is evolving. They planted the seed that Banner can successfully do experiments with himself. Next Avenger villain is World Breaker Hulk. I wouldn't mind that Hulk becomes the villain. I mean, the Future Imperfect storyline, the Peter David, George Perez storyline about the Maestro, the future Hulk who takes over the world. I think that could be really, really, really cool. That would be an awesome movie. The MCU is moving further away from miraculous and I'm the mundane and more down the yellow brick road. Still made love ya, but James Christie says the MCU is moving further away from miraculous and I'm the mundane and more down the yellow brick road. Still love you, but yeah. I don't quite know what you mean by that, James. Little strange wording there, but it is going toward more of the miraculous. Vegetable Tube says SpongeBob 5 years later. Maybe so. Alexis, that'd kind of be interesting. Alexis Polito says, in my opinion, they could get Natasha from the past, but they would create a reality where she is gone. That is correct. Good for them, but a loss for the Avengers of that other reality. Absolutely. That's why they won't do it. Completely agree with you. Patrick Conway says, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, and Scarlett Johansson will still voice them in What If. They might. That'd be cool. I mean, the animated show, that would really be cool. Ben Birdside says, in Avengers, Hulk was viewed as the biggest badass in the MCU, but in Endgame, Hulk is reduced as a comedy character. I don't know how I feel about his arc. Well, he wasn't a comedy character. He brought back half the universe when he snapped. I mean, he also started out building the time machine. I mean, he's now a professor, and I'm sure we'll see him unleashed in future movies. Incomplete Control says, God Killer Thor series for Hemsworth Final Farewell. That could be good. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think he's going to stick around as Thor. I think he likes it. Brandon Barrett says, I'm watching Infinity and I realize that Wanda saying she's not alone and all the heroines show up is a callback to Widow saving her from Proxima. Yeah, I think so too. I think that was absolutely that, Brandon. That was very astute observation. Burt Macklin says, so how is a hammerless Thor going to fight Malekith? Malekith? Well, that's why Captain America is returning Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, to the point where Thor took it from. Robert Johnson says, Tony wanted everyone to retire and live happily ever after since Age of Ultron. I love Cap retiring as a way to honor Tony's sacrifice. I completely agree. I love it. Mark C. says, I lost it during Tony's death. I lost my father 5 years ago. The words that Pepper says to Tony are almost the exact ones I gave to my dad just before he left. Right there with you. Burt Macklin says, Cap was selfish. He erased Shannon Carter for good. Maybe. We'll see. I mean, could be. I don't know. Maybe it was an aunt thing instead of a grandmother thing. Jeff Mullen says, Rocket was at Nevedalier and saw Rocket was at Nevedalier and saw Stormbreaker get made and help make the Iron Gauntlet. I think this makes sense, says Jeff Mullins. I agree. I like that a lot. Warrington Train Spotter 2778 says, I love the Spider-Man and Tony scene. I did too. I thought it was great. It was a great bookend. Kevin King says, what about the plot hole of regular humans touching the Infinity Stones? Hawkeye held the Soul Stones and somebody's hand had to touch one during the, I guess, what did you say? During the away moment. Also, what about Thor taking the hammer from his timeline? I guess his Thor had a little more trouble in his timeline, but I love the movie. Well, as we've talked about a lot, that Thor was replaced, but that Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, was replaced. But I also think that, again, as we've talked about, Hawkeye was able to, if you've sacrificed a soul, however that works, you're able to touch the Infinity Stone without doing something horrible to you. Jameson says, Tony's gauntlet was no different than a stone on Ronin's hammer. Also, it could barely contain the power even while Thanos wore it. His never had that problem. Yeah, it's true. It could barely contain the power. Robert Johnson says, my theory, time stone can alter reality. Quantum zone time travel splits realities. However, Avengers are operating without knowing this distinction. Could be. I mean, I don't think that's a bad theory. I think that's actually kind of good. Captain Mexico 21 says, I thought we were going to get a beefed up Hulk when they said the stones were mostly gamma radiation. Maybe we'll see the effects later on. Could be. You never know. Germanian says, over under 35% Chris Hemsworth will sign a new MCU deal. Well, he did sign a new MCU deal, as we know. Now he's in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I'm sure we're going to see Hulk 4 or Ragnarok 2. Who knows? But you can't have really a second Ragnarok, because Ragnarok, the very name, it means it's over. Midtown Mike says, but John, we see a raging Hulk in Endgame. Kinda. Yes. Burt Macklin says, Thanos breaking Cap's shield was awesome. It was awesome, and I'm glad they included it in the hot toy. JJ Smith says, nice bow tie on this arc. Now let's see Avengers versus X-Men. I would like to see that too. But they got to interview They have to introduce the X-Men properly. We got to see them properly. Jose Robles says, Korg, Thor the kid on TV is back. I thought that was so funny. They're playing that kid. Thor like smack talks him. You can just imagine Thor and Korg playing online video games for 5 years as they get hammered. I wonder if Korg can get hammered. Kyle Malinowski says, I think they should make a skit video of the past Thor looking around Asgard from Mjolnir after the future Thor took it. Like the Daryl skits. Ha ha ha. Yeah, but Cap took it back. Stars said, I think Thanos' gauntlet reduced the damage from using the stones. Even Thanos had trouble holding Tony's gauntlet. Could very well be. Very well be. Jose Robles says, would this be Robert Redford's last movie as the old man in the sea, or the old man in the gun? Jose, someone else brought that up, but yes, it would be, unless he makes another movie. Selvin89 says, would have loved to see Deadpool make the final snap. Deadpool. would have loved to see DP make the final snap. Laugh out loud. That'd be funny. Jacob Armstrong says, Ray to Ann as John walks by. That's Canada's ass. I wish John had read that. That's funny. Kin T says, if they plan to release a special edition in theaters like Avatar did with extended scenes or even a teaser type of post-credits scene, would it be of any significance in terms of box office? Maybe if they waited like a year or something. Could be. That could be kind of cool. Kinty asked that. Mike Katz says, earthquake under the sea, Namor coming. Mike, could be. That could have been a Namor tease. We never know. Never know. Anthony T says, hey, you were at the world premiere when Natalie Portman showed up and everyone lost their minds. She's going to kill Thanos. She was only in it for 20 seconds. How come more stars with cameos didn't show? I don't know. Maybe they're busy working? I don't know. Haskell 420 is here. Haskell says, hey guys, A-Force was the all-female Avengers shot, had sniffles throughout Endgame. Biggest were Tony and Pepper, final scene, Happy and Morgan, but legit cry time driving home thinking of Schnepp. Yeah. Had honor to hang with him for 3 hours at New York Comic Con in 1917. In 2017, after his NYCC panel, played pool at the bar, helped me get drunk before Ellis's comedy show. Can see him arm and fist in the air, losing his mind with Endgame. Well, having sat next to him watching Infinity War, let me tell you, Schnepp would have lost it in Endgame. He would have lost it. Beruz Herilev says old Cap lived his life in the past and then maybe until 2011 used the Pym particle and then came to the present 2023. So this way Banner is right. Probably. Boku no Hero says you can't beat a river into submission. You must surrender to its current and use its power as your own. The Ancient One to Doctor Strange 3 years ago. Doctor Strange does this exactly in Endgame. Yes, Boku no Hero. I agree with you, and I thought that was very cool. Very, very. I love seeing the Ancient One come back, too. Matthew Heap says, Cap goes back and replaces the stones to where they came from. Scene wouldn't have fit in this amazing film, but this means there was a Cap and Red Skull interaction we may never get to see. Yeah, and I like that. Just like in Empire Strikes Back, we never see the bounty hunter they ran into on Ord Mantell, who changed his mind. I like that. These characters have we don't see everything they do. We only see a part of their lives. Ravicha Mopadivi? For me, the actual hero was the rat, which presses some random button on an ex-con van. Without that, there was no way the movie continued. I agree. But somebody would have found it, I think, maybe. Ralph Rochia says, wasn't it great seeing Robert Redford back? It was. I loved it. Big Jim says, here, have my free super chat before it expires. Well, Big Jim, thank you for your super chat. R Squared Games, thank you for that super chat. Dynamite V1 says, did Happy and Aunt May get dusted too? I don't know. That's a good question. I think Aunt May probably did. I don't know. Actor Friend 90 says, John, I remember you saying you hoped it wasn't Captain Marvel that rescued Tony, but did you like the way they did it? I did. I thought it was good. It was a great scene. I loved how they played it out, and it made sense that she found him. I mean, she was the only one that could go travel back to Titan. R Squared Games says, so disappointed Hulk didn't get his rematch. It's true. I was kind of disappointed, but I like what Hulk got to do. Life, sometimes you don't get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you just might find you get what you need. Ralph Rochia says, I also thought it was cool we got back the upper-class snob Ebony Maw. Loved getting Ebony Maw back. I just wish that there was more of him. I love Ebony Maw, and I love the way you put it, upper-class snob. That was awesome. Thanks for that, Ralph. Rachel Kane says, love Professor Hulk. When he saw Hulk in 2012 and Professor Hulk had his head in his hands. I love that, too, and how he was just perfunctorily smashing things. And loved Hulk and the Stairs. Absolutely loved Hulk in this movie. Well, you know, it's funny because we did get to see Hulk smash things from the 2012 Hulk did. So maybe that's why they felt they could get away with not doing it. Donnie Yasu says, Thor in space. Sounds like we may get Beta Ray Bill. It's James Gunn. I'll bet you we're going to get Beta Ray Bill in Guardians 3. I just bet we are. Vikram says, Tony coming back in the future as an AI. Cost-effective way to keep Robert Downey Jr. in the universe, just using voice over the acting. I agree now. I agree. Jordan Huxtable says, where do they take Hulk's story now? I don't know. Maybe he goes a little megalomaniacal and wants to take over the world, kind of like the Imperfect storyline I was talking about with when he becomes the Maestro. That'd be pretty good. World War Hulk. Bring it on. Scuba Steve says, Star-Lord, Drax, Groot, and the chick with the antenna thing. I love that. I loved when Rocket said that. I thought that was so funny. Brandon Xenart. Cap used the quantum bracelet to come back to the original timeline. Yes, he did. He grabbed extra Pym particles mid-movie. He returned the stones and hammer and went back to the time after he froze in the ocean to be with Peggy. I agree. That's exactly what he did. I hope Thor's in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I do too. Dark Tings sent us a super chat. Thank you, Dark Tings. Jordan Huxtable says, how does Cap take the Skull Stone back? Red Skull should be free. Loved the movie, seen it 3 times so far. Cried when Iron Man died, but only on the second viewing. Well, Jordan, I agree with you. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe Red Skull is bound to that place. Maybe Vormir has more meaning than just the Soul Stone. Maybe there's more going on there, but maybe the Soul Stone knew it was eventually going to be back. Who knows? Warrington, and remember, when they took the Soul Stone away and they brought it back, no time would have passed for Red Skull. Warrington Trainspotter 2778 says, I love the female Avengers in the battle scene. I did too. I love the A-Force. That was cool. It was great. It was one shot. It was awesome. Aaron H says, where did Valkyrie get the horse from? Well, maybe the horse was part of the Asgardian transporting devices. You know, they have those horses. They brought them with them from Asgard. That was something they were able to take, I guess. Big Jim says the all-female scene was totally ham-fisted, but the best part was Wasp de-shrinking in front of everyone else like, bitches, please. Well, Big Jim, I liked it. I thought it was cool. It was fun. It was fan service. It was great. Shane Grew says, I was 8 years old when Iron Man first came out, and I'm 19 now. I was literally crying from when everyone returned to the end. I hope they can replicate the feeling I had during this movie in 10 years. Maybe they will. But you know, you're never 8. You're only 8 once. You're never 8 again. But look, as a grown-ass middle-aged man, I loved Endgame. That was great. Sateka13 says, talking about time travel, I just jumped forward into companion video number 22. Hilarious. In this case, it's companion video 4 for me. Mark C says, Cap, when he cinched up his shield and grimaces in pain, looked exactly like a George Perez drawing. Mark C, I totally agree with you. I loved that. I thought it was great. Flip the USB twice. I got goosebumps when Cap said Avengers Assemble. Well, Flip, me too. I loved it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Anthony Franco says, I hope in some way a theme of Far From Home is Peter dealing with Tony's death and accepting that he needs to step up in his absence. Well, I think we know that from the trailer. That is absolutely true. That's exactly what's going to happen. I think, Anthony, that's a very astute observation on your part. Let's see. Stars says, Widow paved the way for the MCU female heroes. I remember when they barely made her toys after Avengers. A-Force scene is so powerful after her sacrifice. I agree. And they've made a lot of Black Widow hot toys now. Sean Harrington says, possible Cap 4 returning stones. There's a story in it. Maybe. I don't know if they'll show that, but I definitely, Cap could come back. I'd love to see that. Robert Johnson said, I believe Tony's dad said that he was often too selfish to do the greater good. I think Tony needed that little push to make the sacrifice he did. Well, Robert, that's a very good assessment. I think you could absolutely be correct about that. There's no reason you're not. I think that's a great observation. Senior Nerd says, seeing Fat Thor gave me confidence Chris Hemsworth can pull off Hulk Hogan in the Netflix biopic. I agree, Senior Nerd. I thought the same thing you did. I think, why not? Why couldn't he do that? Absolutely. AC Music 7 says, let's not forget, Tony and Natasha would have died if Star-Lord doesn't lose his cool in Infinity War. Well, you know what, AC Music? You could be correct about that. You could be right. Wayne N says, we're now up to 4 hours longer than Endgame. It's true. And I'm up to 4.5 hours just answering these super chats, which is an Endgame and a half. So that's crazy. Cheryl Morris says, looking back at the marketing, are you happy with the restraint of scenes withheld? I am. Thanks, guys, for this discussion. Love you too, 3000. You know what, Cheryl? I think it's great. I think what they did with the marketing of this movie was really fantastic. I hope more people live and learn. Of course, they don't have the build-up that other movies don't have the build-up this movie had, but I think you're right. I love the fact that they kept so much under wraps. Thanks to them. Joe Adonis Talk says, saw it 3 times now and still cry at the same scenes. The Tony Peter reunion, Rocket protecting Groot from the bombardment, Tony, Peter, and Pepper death, Tony's I Love You 3000 to Morgan, Happy Morgan Cheeseburger. So many great moments. I mean, this movie, I'll be watching this over and over and over and over again. AC Music 3 says, Red Skull, Natasha Dwight of Ivan, Clint son of Edith, Steven son of a bitch. That'd be funny if that happens. That'd be funny. Vince Carter of Mars said, Vormir rules isn't a plot hole. Thanos had to stop Gamora because she wouldn't have died from going off the cliff. It would have worked if she jumped off. I don't know if it would have. I don't know if it would have worked if she jumped off. I think that Thanos had to throw her. Abili says Tony telling Cap, "I lost the kid," made me cry time. It got me too. Dashawn Dennis Watkins says John doubted 300 million, but not us. Nope, we didn't. Steve Ben Obi-Wan Larry Kenobi says, I want a Marvel short series about Cap returning the Infinity Stones. The Soul Stone must have blown his mind. I would love to see that too. I mean, and apparently so would just about everybody here. McKeel thank you for the super chat. Fish Taco says, you want to go to Space Puppy? McKeel sent another super chat. Thank you for that. Aaron H says, Thanksgiving had to be awkward at the Rogers household with Cap getting with his aunt and niece. Can you pass the mashed potatoes, Sharon? Could very well be. I don't know, but it's pretty ballsy for Disney. We'll see. Reese has said, so Cap could have lifted the hammer in Age of Ultron all along, but he didn't want to make Thor look bad, which makes the scene have more depth. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think that Cap's journey since Age of Ultron made him worthy, especially what he'd been going through after the 5 years of losing half of humanity and still fighting. I think his worthiness increased exponentially. Gregor's Kudubinski says the Ancient One helped Captain America return stones by using portals. She might have. That's really interesting. Perhaps. I like that idea, actually. That makes sense to me. Michael Solaric says, Hulk, you're basing your plan on Back to the Future. Scott, nope. Our plan is actually based on Back to the Future Part 2. So that means Back to the Future might be bullshit, but Back to the Future Part 2 is not. Miggy B says, I don't understand why John thinks Loki is back. He had the Space Stone. He didn't jump in time. This Loki is dead in the present day. Well, our Loki is dead. If Loki comes back, it'll be from a different quantum reality. Ross Evans says, Cap is so lucky, survived 2 2018 snaps. It's true. He did. I never thought about that. Good job. Frankie B TV says, do you think Cap's seeing Red Skull returning the stones? I don't know, but probably. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't even know if you can return the Soul Stone there. Who knows? Mike Hogan, thank you for the super chat. Roberto E says, the true hero is the rat that brought Ant-Man back. It's true. It is true. But who's to say someone else wouldn't have figured out quantum travel? Ian McQuain says, Tony calls Thor Lebowski at one point, yet both the Dude and Obadiah Stane were portrayed by Jeff Bridges. It's true. It is true. And it's funny hearing Tony Stark saying Lebowski. Reese says, is it just me or did Thanos seem more evil in this? I think he was more evil. I think we got warrior Thanos, battle-hardened Thanos. Definitely more evil. X-Lair says, since the entire universe had to suffer through 5 years of the snapping, might the Eternals be about the universe taking vengeance on Thanos' people? Could be. We'll see. Flute Bates says, did Gamora get dusted? We never see her after Quill. I think she might have, but who knows? Greg C says, the simple fix to Captain America being on the bench would be to have old Cap come through the portal. Maybe he did. Maybe he just was shrunk down because he didn't want anyone to see him until the proper time. I believe that. Mike Hogan says, what if Captain America saved his Pym particle return and all those years gave it to Black Widow a week before she died? I don't think so. I think Black Widow died. Charlie Rogers says, I understand your feelings, but it sucks you feel that way, John. I cried every time I saw Tony and Spidey die. I did not feel like Tony will be back. I don't think he's coming back, except as a voice. I just don't. Caleb Gibson says, Captain America and Peggy will have a child. Imagine them revealing this and casting a new actor to wear the Captain America gear in honor of his dad. What are your thoughts? Yeah, but even if Captain and Peggy had a child, she'd be really old. Or he would be really old. Robert Johnson says, was Thanos stronger before using the Infinity Stones? Probably a lot stronger. Nana Adler says, thank you for sending me a super chat, sending us a super chat, Nana. We used to call my grandmother Nana Babe on my dad's side. Mike Thompson says, so did Cap create a new identity in the 40s or probably he created a new identity in the 40s. I knew it. I predicted that Cap was going to go back in time and live his life with Peggy. Second favorite movie, my favorite is Winter Soldier. Well, that was Javier Barrera 90. Well, Javier Barrera 90, I like that you thought about that. That was great. Nice plot twist you came up with there. And I love it. I really do love that I think it's great. Ratson King. Old man Steve Rogers was always present in this reality. He just lived his life in such a way that he could reach this specific outcome. Now, that could be too, but remember, you can't affect your own past. So if he did go to his own past, but traveling through the quantum realm, you actually go through a different past. But, people have said different things. But you might be right about that. I don't know. Gabriel Bloom says, I don't think the Russos and writers liked Ragnarok. They clearly wanted Thor before Ragnarok. They undid many of the things in Ragnarok. Let's see, Gabriel. His costume changed in Infinity War with no explanation, even though Infinity War happens hours after Ragnarok. Got a new weapon after he learned that he never needed it. Let's see. After he learned that he never needed the weapon and that he had the power himself, and in Endgame, Steve used Mjolnir and lightning came out. And he lost his eye in Ragnarok and got an eye patch. In Infinity War, hours later, he got a new eye and got rid of the eye patch. Well, maybe. But, I don't know. I liked it. I thought what they did with Hulk or Thor was great. Troika S says, a detail in Guardians of the Galaxy 1. Per Gamora's mugshot texts, she's the last survivor of her people. Her home never became a paradise. Thanos never bothered to check. That's kind of like Kirk in Star Trek 2, never bothered to check on Khan's progress. I didn't notice that. I'm going to have to go back and look at that. Brian Rogers says, Jesus, you're still going? I'm drunk, but get your money's worth. Well, Brian, thanks for the super chat, but yes, you certainly are. Charlie Rogers says, on your right, that's where the major tears came. Well, Charlie, that's pretty funny. I like that. Topher Rock says, lackluster was a poor choice of words by me for the battle. I found Endgame's battle too dark and very chaotic. It was hard to follow, similar to Ready Player One's war scene. Just so much going on. Well, I liked it because it was crazy. It was crazy. Like, that's the heat of battle, man. It was nuts. Rory Fansler says, A-Force scene got a lot of cheers in my theater. Women buy tickets too. I agree. I love that scene. I thought it was terrific. I didn't think it was pandering at all. Greg C. says, you could technically take a Black Widow from the past and have her as your own, but that Black Widow isn't going to leave her real team in the past to substitute for your Black Widow in your current timeline. It's true. Plus, it wouldn't be your Black Widow. It wouldn't be entirely the same Black Widow. It'd be a different Black Widow from a different reality. Alex once said in a Q&A for Infinity War, the Russo said Thanos didn't know what was coming his way. If he did, he would have been able to use the stones to react to Stormbreaker. I think in Endgame, it melted his melted ice cream body weakened him. I agree. He was weakened. Gabriel Bloom says, after he learned that he never needed the weapon and that he had the power himself, and in Endgame, Steve used Mjolnir and lightning. I'm already reading this. I just realized what Gabriel was saying. Well, okay. To go back to your question, Gabriel, which I didn't do a good job answering. Look, I think it's different. Like, obviously, he learned that he didn't need Mjolnir to focus his power. But I think that's the point. Thor is the thunder god. It's not the hammer he carries. It's Thor. So he had to learn who he was again. So anyway, Carl Ensner says the shot of Thanos saying "daughter" looked like a PS2 character. Oh, I don't know, man. I did like all the CG in the movie, but maybe some was sketchier. Eldermount says, will the Disney Plus series on Loki be the Loki who just snagged the Tesseract? I think probably true. He will be. Brandon L., thank you for the super chat. Gabriel, I keep going back to Gabriel Bloom. Then in Endgame, they gave him his hair back and made him fat. Then he abandons his own people after Odin told him he needs to step up and be king. I think he will come back and be king. He just has work he's got to do. He's got to get back to being his normal self. Then he can come back and rule. Kella EQ2 says, I had 2 issues with the all-female scene. I felt that the person to help Spider-Man should have been Pepper. Well, because Captain Marvel should have been able to deliver the stones alone, and I think they should have given Mantis a second or 2 of combat and not just the pose. It's true, but they had so many characters to service. But maybe it should have been Pepper. That would have been nice, actually. I don't disagree with you there. Snake Jerusalem said Tony might have built his gauntlet with material. Tony might have built his gauntlet with material left from Thanos' gauntlet, hence why he could make it work. The team probably kept the original one. That's interesting. You know, they didn't show that, but you might be right about that they incorporated the gauntlet, the forged gauntlet material into Tony's gauntlet. I like that idea. I think that's great. Ivan Gonzalez says, hey, John, I was wondering if you noticed the kid from Iron Man 3 in the funeral. Do you think they will make him Iron Man or do something with him? I think they brought him back. I think that was great. And who knows, but I do believe they're going to do something with him later. That's why he was there. Jacob Hirsch says, Civil War, I'm Clint. I don't care. Now in Endgame, Black Panther calls Clint by his name as he gives an assist. I just love those little nods to the past. Well, Jacob, me too. Loved it. Love those nods to the past. Jennifer Morales, do you think Iron Man could wield Thor's hammer now? No, I don't. Agent Awesome. Hey, John, what happened with Mjolnir? Cap took it from him to the past, but he only had his shield when he was old. Well, he had to take Mjolnir and leave it back on Asgard. He did. Brandon L. says, the rat that saved Ant-Man is Splinter, I can dream. Yes. Oh, I think I actually said these once before. Alex Von Gollum says, I loved how Thanos was used in Endgame. Oh my God, he was absolutely terrifying and relentless. I think this solidifies his place as number one of the best villains ever. Well, Alex, I love Thanos. I think he absolutely is one of the great villains ever. He had a philosophy. He was formidable. He was just a badass. I loved it. Derek Jacobs says, how did Cap return the stones, especially the Soul Stone, the Reality Stone, the Power Stones? Maybe he had the help of the Ancient One. I like somebody like that said that earlier. I think that's great. That could happen. I don't know, though. It's a mystery. Actor Friend 90 says, surprise Portman agreed to come back. Yeah, I don't know if they actually shot something new for her or something else. I mean, she probably had nothing to do, and they only needed her for a couple of shots, unless they used stock footage. Allure Cosplay says, they did an awesome job at showing us the price that the Soul Stone demands, but I wish they showed us its powers like with the other stones. Yeah, but I still think it was good. CT says, the A-Force scene may be forced, but what I took away from it, that it was the teamwork and the Carol accepting of it, which Natasha called her out at the beginning. I like that, CT. Yeah, I mean, she wasn't just, well, I'm going to go kill Thanos. She was actually working with teams. And I think that's great. That's a great, great observation. Angel Jacoby says, glad it was a rat and not an ant, so you didn't storm out. Yes, I thought it was. I like the fact that the randomness of the universe, as exemplified by that rat, you never know what's going to take you. You just never know. That the stones no longer, this is from Alex Von Gollum, that the stones no longer exist is an opportunity for bringing new powerful villains. The Ancient One mentioned the imbalance from the absence of the Time Stone. Thoughts? Well, there's no Infinity Stones in this galaxy, so in the MCU Prime. So I don't know what that means. What is that going to mean to people? I don't know. It's really, really interesting. There is going to be an imbalance, and maybe that causes Dormammu can get who knows? I think it's dangerous. I think the MCU is going to deal with that in the future. I absolutely do. Well, everyone, this brings a conclusion to all of my questions. This was the fourth. Wow, I've done this now for 4 hours and 40 minutes. I want to thank you for sitting here and listening to me. It's a great pleasure that you have sent us these super chats to know that you care about supporting the channel. I know that John puts his heart and soul into doing this, and these super chats make the channel what it is. It allows John to give you the best John Campea show possible. Couldn't do it without you. So thank you, and thank you for putting up with me reading these questions. I am so tongue-tied I can barely talk. But I want to thank you very much for supporting the channel. Keep watching. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to the John Campea Show. Ding that little bell so you'll always know when John's going on. And I myself am Robert Meyer Burnett. You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at RMBurnett. Or find me on my own YouTube show, The Burnett Work. Or on my website, theburnettwork.net. So I want to thank you for being here with me and letting me read these questions for you. I had a lot of fun, and you guys have a lot of great points. And I just don't know when we're ever going to do a review that's 5 hours long that has probably triple that in terms of questions. But who knows? We live in wonderful times, my friends. Thanks for watching, and I very much appreciate your support.